Deep in the Ecuadorian Amazon, rivers are the highways. For generations, communities here have depended on dugout canoes, or more recently, costly gasoline-powered boats. Fuel shortages often left them stranded, sometimes for weeks, cut off from trade, medicine, and even each other. But now, solar power is changing that. Carro Solar is an indigenous-led project that's building solar-powered riverboats and charging stations. With the support of the Hanno Foundation, Carro Solar gives communities clean, reliable transport, reducing dependence on fossil fuels while strengthening ties between villages. It's not just about mobility, it's about connection, resilience, and protecting the rainforest. So today you'll hear from the people leading this change, how solar canoes are transforming daily life, how cleaner travel is empowering local governance, and what a future of floating solar networks might look like across the Amazon and beyond. I'm Alex Arnold, professional rock climber and founder of the Hanno Foundation, bringing you stories of inspiring people who are helping to solve some of today's most pressing conservation issues. In partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative, this is Planet Visionaries.
Mi nombre es Nantu Canelos.
My name is Nantu Canelos. I am the director of the Carro Solar Institution. I am part of the Achuar of Xaramensa community, located in the province of Pastaza. I remember as a kid, with my father, you had to row with an oar. You had to sweat to go fishing upriver. These are Amazonian rivers with strong tides. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of sacrifice. We have the first canoe, a solar boat, being the first canoe that works with an electric motor powered by solar energy. Tapiapia is a legendary fish in the Achuar culture. In our myths, this fish would travel in the oceans and all the rivers in the world. And to honor that, we asked, why don't we name the canoe Tapiapia? It works with an electric motor, and in our myths, it seemed appropriate. So we baptized it Tapiapia. Also, the connection between communities was complicated because going and coming back between communities required a lot of effort. Today we can cross to the other side and come back in the evening. It's a lot easier today. Because it makes very little noise, it works to visit the clay lakes of animals and birds. Economically, it helps the women who can take what they farm to sell to all the communities. It has been great help during emergencies to transport people in need, mostly children. I believe when a community has no vision, no project in mind, it is easy to fall for temptation like the building of highways. However, this project that is born from the Achuar territory, with young people involved in it, technicians, everyone from this territory, we don't need a highway.
Oliver, good to see you. You want to just dive in with tell me who you are, what you do?
My name's Oliver Utney, and I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Went to university, got close to graduation, and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And around that time, my mom took a trip to the Amazon and came back kind of inspired, and specifically with this idea that I needed to go to the Amazon. And so she brought me as my college graduation present and got to go deep into the Amazon and spend time in Achuar territory in the southeast of Ecuador. I loved it there. Came back thinking that I needed to go back. I found a way to go spend the summer, not in the Amazon itself, but I contacted an organization that was working in the Amazon, and they said, well, we don't have any volunteer positions open in the Amazon right now, but we have a small plane that we are refurbishing in rural British Columbia and donating to an indigenous-owned airline in the southeast of Ecuador. And we need someone who speaks Spanish and English to go with the indigenous mechanic and the Ecuadorian pilot as they train on this plane and translate for them, and then accompany the plane back down to Ecuador. So
that sounds like a vaguely dangerous job when you're the translator on a refurbished small aircraft in the Amazon.
Totally.
I hope it works.
Totally.
So I've known you, several years now, I guess, through your work at Carro Solar and through the Hanno Foundation. So fast forward to to getting into boats? Like, how do you meet up with the Achuar? Talk about Car Solar.
Yeah, so that plane was being donated to the Achuar airline Aerosensac. And at that point, there were no roads going into their territory. And so it was a key lifeline.
And the Achuar are an indigenous group in rural Ecuador?
Exactly. So the Achuar are about 10,000 people in Ecuador who have about 1 million hectares of territory in the southeast of Ecuador that when I arrived in 2008 was unreachable by road. And so the main way that they moved around in their territory was by boat, but the boats all used gasoline. And so living and working at the airport, I was seeing just these incredible quantities of gasoline that were going in every day on planes. And just, how much people were having to spend on gasoline of their meager incomes.
And traditionally, they just use dugout canoes. They're just paddling.
Exactly, yep. Traditionally,
gasoline had displaced muscle power.
Yeah. The paddle canoes are still used, and they're absolutely awesome, and they're beautiful, and they work for a lot of the trips that people do. But Achuar life has really changed over the last couple generations, and that was what really fascinated me.
That you were experiencing a moment of first contact, basically, that you felt like you were there for a moment of...
Exactly.
Which is kind of interesting, because it's like you don't really think of that existing very much in the world. And that is
so exciting and such an honor to get to be a part of this encounter where these people who had been completely cut off from the world that I grew up in were suddenly entering into this world. The roads were going deeper and deeper into the forest and pretty quickly reached Achuar territory. And wherever the roads go, there's deforestation. And as I kind of learned more about this, I learned that deforestation is, after fossil fuels, the leading cause of climate change.
Because in general, you'd think that connecting communities by road, sounds great. Because certainly in most of the developed world, the better transportation is, the better society functions, basically. So talk about what road building allows in the Amazon.
I think 95% of all deforestation in the Amazon occurs within just a few kilometers of roads.
Which makes sense, because you can only extract the timber, by truck.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you can see it in these satellite photos where wherever a road goes, the forest just steadily disappears. It's become clear that if there's a viable future for the Amazon, it has to include stopping road building. And then there's all these other effects, and I've been able to see them living in Ecuador and having seen the communities before the roads came and after the roads came. It's really dramatic. The communities that were not reachable by roads when I got there were pretty much totally self-sufficient in terms of food. And once the road comes in, they connect to the market economy.
And then you have to start selling things, which means you start cutting things down or extracting things or mining things. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I don't think that everything about the outside world is bad.
Yeah, it's like for good and bad, because like you get medicine, you get access to healthcare, all this kind of things.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, but I think that the Amazon is this interconnected network of thousands and thousands of kilometers of navigable rivers. Then I had the opportunity to go and live in an indigenous community for 2 months. There, my experience changed my life, really. And so I decided to go back to the US and study solar energy, and did that for a year, and then came back to Ecuador. And then this one day, I was talking to this guy who had been working with solar energy in the Amazon for decades. And then he said, well, you could do a boat that works with solar energy. And that was a moment that I will never forget. I remember where I was sitting, and it just kind of became an obsession, where I started talking about it with everybody I saw and learned that a lot of the indigenous people had also had the same idea. And that there were even legends in the Achuar culture about what they called an electric fish boat that becomes a means of transportation and carries all the people and the animals around the rivers. So the people at the organization that I was at said, we have this connection to MIT, and we got them to do a formal study, and the results came back and they were super positive. And so then I had MIT's seal of approval, and that's really when things got started. And there were a lot of chapters and setbacks to try to build the first boat. It took us, I think, from the time we got the results of that study until the time we put the first boat in the water, it was almost 4 years. But that was really what set it off.
That's kind of the classic journey where it takes 4 years to build the first boat. And now how many boats are you guys deploying?
So yeah, we built the first boat in 2016. Since then, we've built 12 similar boats in Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, Suriname, and Solomon Islands. all kind of big community shuttle boats that are providing public transportation.
Yeah, almost like a ferry, huh?
Almost like
They're
a ferry, exactly.
But small scale, like a village ferry, not like a Puget Sound ferry or something.
Exactly. These are like 20 passenger boats. Yeah, like I said, we've built 12 of them so far and shown that they can work. I mean, they're running really reliably. We directly operate 4 of them now in Achuar territory, and they move about 800 passengers a month. But we also learned that in order to go to where we want to go next, which is an Amazon that is road-free and where communities are connected by electric river transportation, there has to be equipment made specifically for the Amazon. And so we've spun off a manufacturing company called Motores Amazonas that's doing that. It's building equipment for the Amazon. And to us, that means really simple, really robust, and really repairable. And I remember when you visited us, we were showing you some of our early prototypes, and I think you might have used the word spaghetti to describe the cables and how everything looked kind of like this big, complicated mess of electronic connections.
That's like DIY electronics, It's like
exactly.
when you're building it yourself, you're just like, let's add this on here. And
exactly.
Yeah,
and we've been doing that
slightly more commercial, huh?
Exactly. We've really simplified it. Our goal has been to create the most simple, most robust motor that doesn't break, and then when it does break, can be fixed locally. We're kind of developing like a philosophy of what technology for the Amazon means. And it's really different from what technology means in the rest of the world, because in the rest of the world, we see technology that's not made to be messed with by the user.
You're supposed to get the new one.
Exactly. You're supposed to get the new one. That model doesn't work in the Amazon, because the Amazon, the logistics of moving a person around the Amazon are so expensive and so cumbersome that it just doesn't work. And so you have to be able to fix something locally.
I feel like we should sort of paint a picture of, we're talking about river transit, like traveling in rivers. But I feel like most people listening don't have the proper mental image of what traveling up a small river in the Amazon is like. And I don't know if I've told you the story, but I did an expedition in Guyana where we went and climbed Tepuis, like sort of on the border of Venezuela and Brazil. And to get there, we flew a plane into a village and then took a boat up the river to the furthest region, like to the furthest village, and then walked from there for several days. And so it was sort of a taste of Amazonian life, where it's like, you fly as far as you can, then you boat as far as you can, then you walk the rest of the way, because there's just no transit options. And when we were riding the boat, it was like a whole day boat ride up this river. And it was super windy, narrow stream, basically. And, there are places where trees have fallen over the river, and one of the local guys was standing on the bow of the boat with a chainsaw and like chainsawing trees out of the way. The other thing that I was really struck by on that trip was that the cost of diesel, because you're so far out there, is so expensive that, it's just prohibitive, which is why everybody walks. So I was like, man, this really is. It was interesting because that whole expedition, we spent, several weeks out in the jungle. It was a TV show for National Geographic. And we had something like 60 local people help carry loads out into the middle of nowhere. And it occurred to me that this is one of the only places on Earth where you can't really be aided by fossil fuels. Because even like remote expeditions in, like Greenland or Baffin Island or, Pakistan, whatever, you can basically have planes or helicopters drop things ahead of time. But with the Amazon, with cloud cover and with the canopy, you just can't really be serviced by aircraft. And so you just have to physically walk the whole way. And I was like, man, there just aren't really any other places on Earth where you're required to do things by human power like that.
They are experts, right? Like they have figured out how to live well out in the jungle. And it's just like thousands of years of learning to live in the environment.
But that's part of the reason I think that the Hahnel Foundation has supported the work of Prosolar, is just knowing that type is just such an interesting application for solar.
The rest of the world has this incredible distribution system for fossil fuels set up, gas stations and pipelines and roads and all these things that we don't really think about. But gasoline is just moving around all the time. And the Amazon doesn't have that. And it may have that. That's one of the possible futures. But that would mean the end of the forest, I think. And it would mean the end of the indigenous cultures. And so there's a chance to think about another future for the Amazon, which is based on solar that has this magical ability to make energy anywhere. And that's really what's inspired me is this vision of, relatively small solar installations spread across the Amazon that once they're installed, they're just producing energy, and the energy doesn't have to be moved around. After seeing so many planes and so many boats full of gasoline, moving around gasoline.
That's the irony, is like you're burning gasoline to move gasoline, and the further you go up the river, the more expensive it is. And you're just kind of like, surely there's a better way. Like, why not just generate the energy on source? And then the double irony with the Amazon, they're extracting oil or trying to extract oil from the Amazon and then ship it elsewhere and then refine it elsewhere and then ship it back.
Yep. And that's what's happening.
And that's crazy.
Yep. That's kind of the origin of Cara Solar. And that's our evolution into now spinning off this manufacturing company. I've stepped out of leading the foundation, and my colleague Nantu is now the executive director, Nantu Canelos, who is an Achuar guy, and he leads the foundation from Achuar territory. The team is now about 30 people, and most of them are Achuar. There's an incredible team of technicians that's moving around not just their territory, but also other territories throughout the Amazon, doing installations, and more importantly, teaching other people how to manage their own solar systems. There's been quite a bit of solar in the Amazon over the years, just because it makes so much sense. But I think what Cara Solar has really added is this belief that the local people can manage it themselves.
Can do it themselves.
Yeah. And, that was, I think, our big, probably the most important evolution in Cara Solar as an organization happened when the pandemic came. And the local team just totally stepped up, and since then has kept the boats running and really demonstrated that they are completely capable of not just operating these boats, but designing the next generation of technology. And so we spun off the company. The company is majority owned by the foundation, and we're building our first factory now. It's the first of what we hope will be many mini factories. Because another part of our philosophy of what technology for the Amazon is based on this idea that the manufacturing and the service and the know-how also has to be near the end user.
It's like decentralized, the same as the power. It's like It all needs to be decentralized.
Exactly.
This idea that the Achuar can do it themselves, I mean, sort of indigenous sovereignty, like them leading the way. I mean, does that have to do, is that why you stepped down as from leading Cara Solar?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was clear that I was not the most qualified person to lead this organization anymore. Nantu had done every job in the organization, from driving a boat to being a technician to spreading the message, connecting with allies. And, we want to lead I think we are leading a solar revolution in the Amazon. And it's just so clear that Nantu is way more equipped to do that than I am. He's building incredible alliances with other indigenous nations. He's building these incredible technical exchange programs. So we're building these networks of indigenous-owned, locally staffed recharge stations that we think can then lay the groundwork for our company, Motores Amazonas, and also many other companies to build electric boats and have them spread throughout the Amazon.
I mean, basically, when you talk about building a recharge network, you're not just talking about recharging boats. You're talking about electrifying communities that, traditionally don't really have power. I mean, it's not like there are power lines going anywhere in the Amazon.
No, that's right. So transport goes hand in hand with energy in these communities. And the recharge stations that we're building are also solar centers. So the 3 that we have built right now in Achuar territory are connected to the schools, connected to businesses that they have in the communities, like an eco lodge. They're connected to public lighting, like lighting some of the common areas. They're connected to a community kitchen, all kinds of things that the communities have decided to use that extra energy for. And I think that's a really important part of the model, that, we're putting these solar centers around in different communities. They can recharge boats, and then they can provide energy for whatever the community wants. And we're building them with a sustainable financial model too. So we think that the capital expenditure of building the recharge station needs to be covered by foundations, by international cooperation money, and eventually government money. And our hope long-term is that governments, instead of building roads, will build recharge stations. But in order to get there, we need to demonstrate that it's a real model.
Yeah, it's a long ways from the MIT paper that says it could work, and now you're proving that it does work, and now you need the actual government scale, like public policy, basically, to make it work.
Exactly.
Can we talk about the environmental side of running tons of small gasoline motors in a river like that?
Yeah,
I mean, what does that do for fishing and for the river
it's absolutely
ecology?
Devastating. And these are people who depend on the rivers for their source of food, and the Peke Peke motors, which we think there's about 1 million of them across the Amazon. They're proliferating incredibly quickly. And they burn gasoline, but they also require oil lubricant. And so people pour incredible quantities of burnt motor oil into the shaft as lubricant. People tell me they use up to 1 liter a day. And that just drips directly down the shaft into the river. And
That's so gross.
It's so bad. And so, probably that's more of an impact than the gasoline even, in terms of the water quality. And everyone is saying that the levels of fish are just going down and down, and you just can't fish like you used to be able to. And then there's another component, which is, I mentioned the name Peke Peke. It comes from the sound of the motors. They're really,
it's like a two-stroke,
really loud.
like if you think like a little motorcycle ripping around or something like.
Exactly. And so people are getting hearing damage. They're spending hours and hours a day on these boats exposed to these incredibly loud noises, and it's damaging their ears, and it's damaging their ability to hunt. And it's, people are just fed up with it. And some of the communities are built right along the river, and people tell us that's the impact that they're most excited about with the electric motors.
I kind of want to ask big picture around indigenous sovereignty and like what this means for letting local people decide their own futures. Can you talk about that?
Well, there should be on, moral and ethical grounds, because these are such incredible cultures that are disappearing so quickly. And so that alone is reason enough. But there are also self-interested reasons why the whole world should get behind the indigenous people of the Amazon having a say for how their territories are developed. And it's because all the best preserved areas, the most biodiverse areas, the areas that are not being deforested, are the indigenous territories. And so it's proven, it's demonstrated that, where indigenous people are able to really control their territories, the territories are intact, and therefore, and we are all benefiting from that. I think it's hard for people to wrap their minds around how important the Amazon is, but it's the largest forest in the world, and it's being deforested at alarming rates. And deforestation is the second cause of climate change after fossil fuel burning. And so we have to stop the deforestation in the Amazon. And the best way to do that is to empower indigenous people to control what happens in their territory, because they don't deforest it.
Because it seems like you're doing the correct thing and it's having the correct outcome. We're going like, oh, that's nice. What does scaling your work look like now? What are the next steps? Is electric transit the future in the Amazon?
Yeah, I hope so.
Long term, how long term are we talking? Like how quickly can you make that happen?
So for us, that means building probably about 20 factories between now and 2030, and deploying and servicing, providing ongoing support for 10,000 boats. It's a big number, but I think there's 1 million boats of that same size in the Amazon. So, it's just a fraction of that. We're already looking at opening in Peru and Brazil and Colombia, and developing partnerships in those countries. There's this study that's been funded by the Inter-American Development Bank, and it's looking at the environmental impacts of roads versus solar-powered river transportation, but also the economic impacts. And I think we're going to be able to demonstrate that that this is economically viable and economically advantageous. For this to really scale, there has to be this network of recharge stations. And it's not realistic to think that they're going to be funded by the end user. There needs to be a government component. And so that's what we're working on. And we've taken really solid steps towards creating a model that will be viable and allow solar-powered river transportation to scale across the whole Amazon.
Someone's going to come in with economies of scale and build millions of electric motors, in the same way that they are for cars. And ultimately, is that kind of what you're hoping for?
We're setting up this network of local manufacturing. We have the know-how of what it really takes to make things not just work in the Amazon, but work over time, how to sustain technology in the Amazon. And we're using our 10 years of practice to build things that we know respond to the Amazon and what's required in the Amazon. But yeah, it would be fantastic for Honda and BYD to come in. And if they put us out of business, that would be a pill we would have to swallow.
Well, but if it converts, all river transit to electric, you're like, great. Like
exactly.
You want to go out of business in that way.
Exactly.
It's like you want to see that become the norm.
Exactly.
I think to wrap up, in some ways your story is kind of amazing, where it's like basically a college kid that doesn't know what you want to do with your life, going down to Ecuador, finding something, basically finding a problem that calls out for a solution, and then working towards that solution. And now it's all kind of working, like it's actually happening, and it potentially will change the whole model of transportation in the region. Was there an overarching vision of the whole thing? I mean, like, how has this journey felt for you personally?
So there's always been kind of this thread that I've just been, I feel so fortunate. I mean, I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't doing this. To just have this thing that compels me because I want to see what happens if we keep going.
Keep pulling the thread.
Keep pulling the thread,
like,
exactly.
See where you get. You know, I mean, is there a lesson to be gained there in terms of like doing something that, I mean, because really you're doing something that seems impossible. You know, it's never been done. It's a new idea. It's visionary. You know, it's like, I mean, what's the lesson there?
One thing that I talk a lot about with my partner in Motores Amazonas, Billy Bowman-Shaw, who's the technical mastermind behind this whole vision. We often talk about anyone who has the opportunity to take a risk should take a risk. We have strong safety nets. We have family support. We have education. We have all these privileges that most people don't have. And so I think with that comes this duty to take a risk. And I think, you know, ultimately it's not self-sacrifice. It's actually really fun and really rewarding to take a leap and to try to do something that's scary. Pretty much everything that's good in my life has come out of doing something that I was scared to do. And I'm incredibly scared to try to build a manufacturing company across the Amazon. And that's almost more reason to do it. It's an honor that people would spend the time to listen to this podcast. It's an honor that people care what's going on, you know, across the planet. It's great to be recognized. And I think that our team is a huge team, and there's so many people like Nantu and Billy, who I mentioned, but also the majority of my colleagues who are in the Amazon right now, and then a really solid team in Quito. And all of us are just kind of tickled and honored that this very peculiar thing that we're working on, that we're all obsessed with, is raising interest around the world. And so we're very grateful.
Do you see the New York Times article about the work of Car Solar earlier this summer?
Yeah, we were blown away by that.
I don't know if you read the comments on that, but I did, and it's interesting because all the most popular comments were all to the effect that it was the most uplifting story that they'd read all season, or that it was so inspiring, or basically it's just so rare to read really positive sort of environmental news like that. And I think it was interesting to see, mainstream reporting cover the work of Car Solar, and to have just normal people who have never heard anything about the work be like, this is a good idea, this is amazing. And I mean, that's largely how I felt, when we came upon the work through the Hono Foundation. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. Like, that's something that should happen. It's like, and it's just a matter of funding, then let's definitely give some money and see if it can happen.
I wish my only regret was that there was a lot of time between when they visited us and when the article came out, and our whole kind of rollout of our manufacturing and of Motores Amazonas was only just beginning when they came. And I think that's the most exciting story right now for us that we're really eager to tell, is just that now we've built technology for the Amazon. And so we hope that people stay interested in this next phase. But I mean, the world, it's a cliche, but the world needs positive stories. We're doing something real. We're doing something that's working day in and day out with lots of flaws, lots to improve, but it's real. It's happening. There's solar boats operating right now. There's a lot more coming. There's really smart people focused on this right now, my colleagues, and I'm just super excited about what comes next.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Oliver. That's amazing. Planet Visionaries is a podcast in partnership with the Rolex Perpetual Planet Initiative and a Sony Music podcast production.